likes drawing lines in the sand, and choose who's deserving of a helping hand. And we forget the days that Dr. King taught us to dream. We can give a little love. You wanna make it better. It's all together. The smallest thing that we can bring might just.
There he is, everybody. Craig Pruett back for part 2 of this amazing story that you're about to hear. Welcome back.
I'm so upset that we didn't have any Halloween masks, because I was planning on every chance I got putting one on and kind of doing that.
I actually,
it being Halloween, and
I have an entire box back there behind me. I don't know why I didn't think of that either. We should have talked about this beforehand and planned for something cool instead of just looking at two old fellas right here.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this now, hopefully you watched the first part of the podcast of Craig Pruett. I have divided this into two segments. So we just got finished with part 1, and now we're gonna be talking about part 2 with Craig Pruett. The first part was about just to basically his life, music, law enforcement. We didn't dive deep into a whole lot of personal details. He may choose to do that in this second segment, but where we left off from the first part was we were just kind of talking about your life in law enforcement and music. And you and I had been playing shows for a while. We traveled all over the place. I mean, you and I can't tell you how many shows we've played together, how many miles we've traveled, how many songs we've written, worked on, how many times we've had deep conversations about things, philosophical questions. We've talked about religion, politics. You know, we've experienced a lot and talked about a lot. Yeah. And in 2021, I'm playing a show in Nashville. It was right. We had gone through one major wave of COVID. I had already had COVID, and Craig had, I don't think at this point you'd had COVID at all. And we'd gone, this was in August of 2021.
Yeah.
And had somehow kind of averted it. I remember us, kind of at one point we were just, when COVID first came, we were in Gatlinburg talking about it. Your wife and me and my wife were on a trip to Gatlinburg, and I remember kind of poking at it and not really realizing how big it was about to become. And do you remember that moment? I mean, your life has changed since then, of course, but do you remember us have just kind of, what were your thoughts on it? When COVID first come out, did you have any idea?
I remember there was so much information. I'm not going to say correct information or bad information out there, that for me, honestly, it was just puzzling that we were seeing this pandemic from 2019 start rolling, and it just massively was exploding overseas, especially, and it started showing in the United States. I remember my own agency at the time, there was discussions about first responders getting vaccinated. They were still working on the vaccine, so there was all this confusion about vaccines, and personally, I just didn't know. I felt like we've talked about that. There wasn't enough data. We didn't really know much about COVID. And then suddenly it just exploded. And they started, my kind of job, there's work that's required for you to be out in the public. So,
I remember nobody, of course, everybody listening to this right now or watching this is experienced the same thing, because nobody knew. Yeah. Everybody's trying to find the next thing to cure or to prevent yourself from getting this virus, from ivermectin to, all these other different concoctions to, drinking bleach, whatever,
Yeah.
There was so many different things that were going on. And I remember you just didn't know. by this time in 2021, we all knew somebody that had gotten it or gotten really sick or even died,
Right.
and which was extremely scary. So we had just played a show in Nashville. We're on our way back, and I get a call from Craig, and he's like, "Man, I'm not feeling well." And I remember thinking, okay, well, it could be a number of different things. The first thing that popped in my head was, well, you don't have, it wasn't like, oh God, Craig has COVID.
Yeah.
And I think, we were both in decent shape, and I know you were in good physical condition at this time,
Yeah.
which, for the most part you were not considered a risk factor for COVID, just under kind of a
No, it
standard
wasn't. Yeah.
protocol. Yeah,
Yeah.
in shape. You weren't like, overweight. You were, not terribly old. I mean, you're old, but you're not terribly old.
Yeah.
And so some of those risk factors weren't a big deal. Take me through from that phone call to the day you got in an ambulance.
The first, testing positive. I never really tested positive. Basically, what was it? I can't remember now. I'm sorry. I think it was Sarah. I had been around somebody that got COVID.
No, but you didn't
No, it
know at the
wasn't.
time
I'm
because y'all
sorry.
had been,
I'm sorry. I'm screwing that up.
you were on vacation.
I was the first one getting sick.
Right.
Right.
You were on vacation like the week prior to this somewhere. Remember, we
And that's
couldn't
right.
go.
I tested. I went and tested, and I tested positive for it.
Yeah.
So I tested. I was feeling bad enough that I felt like I needed to get tested, and my doctor said, "Yeah, we need to test you." And once I tested positive for it, it just my body just kept getting worse. Felt terrible. I was talking to you because I think you had it,
Yeah.
and you were kind of telling me, "Hey, this is what I experienced." And I think I remember you even saying, "Man, I actually got to where I thought I was feeling better one day, and then the next day I felt worse."
Yeah.
And so, be careful. It might be a funny thing that happens, and of course it did. I think I went a few days, and I got to where I was like, "Man, I think I might knock this." And I think I got out and mowed the grass, and did some work outside. And the next day I was terrible, and the headache was ridiculous. I hadn't yet got to where I was coughing terribly, but I was just all of a sudden my O2 level was just dropping. And I had, my mom, some other nurse friends had let me know, "Hey, you need to keep a check on your oxygen levels. If they would get below a certain point, you need to go to the hospital." And I was just sitting there miserable, honestly feeling like, I think I probably told you on the phone, like, "Robert, I feel like I'm dying."
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah. I remember talking to Sarah and seeing like she had took a picture. It was a video or something of you were on the couch, just leaning over and just as weak as you could be. And
Yeah.
it wasn't long after that. I had to play a show out of town, and I remember getting a call from Sarah. Your oxygen had dropped to how far? What it dropped to? Like in the
Like 65.
60, yeah, it was in the 60s or
Yeah,
something. It was
65.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
And she said, we're taking Craig to the hospital right now. He's having difficulty breathing and everything else. So it went from there, and then from that point, from the point you left to just, within a week, it went from bad to worse. It went to the point to where, it was really serious. And how much do you remember from what happened once you got in the ambulance I know they said none of us could go to the hospital to see you. I mean, you were kind of by yourself,
Right.
if I'm
That
not
was part of
mistaken.
the COVID lockdown
Yeah.
and that sucked. I remember on the gurney going to the ambulance thinking, God, I'm fixing to go to this hospital and I'm going to be by myself. That's a terrible feeling. Um, I'd always, heard about other family members having family in the hospital and they couldn't visit them and people were suffering by themselves. So I hated the thought of that, but I felt so bad that ride on the back and in the ambulance. I was mentally prepared that this was it. I was probably not going to make it. Um, and so I get to the ER. It's a long night in the ER. I stayed on a gurney in the ER, just trying to breathe. The next day, at some point, they moved me to the COVID floor. I was feeling a little bit better. Um, I remember kind of watching TV a little bit that day. I kind of lost track of time. I think this is where my brain starts to fog out. Um, I remember sending a few texts, talking to Sarah, and then I just went into that dream state. I guess that's when I crashed and I had to collapse lungs, and I guess I was sedated so much. So for me, there was about 7 months, all the way up to almost 11 months. I don't have much memory of anything.
Well, I can fill in the gaps there. So at this point, you had been, you had gotten progressively gotten worse, and I remember getting the phone call, and it was like we're having to put him on a ventilator, which at the time was extremely frightening because so many people had been on ventilators and didn't make it out of this. I mean, this was the
Right.
Delta variant, which was a pretty nasty one, and at that point as well, because there were so many people, the hospitals were so inundated with patients, overwhelmed. ICU, everybody was completely overwhelmed in every hospital, especially Riverview. It was difficult to get any news, any information. So for the first week or two, we were struggling to get any information at all as to how you were doing, if you were doing better, any improvement at all, but they had you out completely. So this went on for a long period of time, and what Craig was out, and just and I'm glad that you don't remember a lot of the things that were going on, but for several months, it was touch and go. Um, there were times that we would hear from the medical staff, down the road, communication had gotten a little bit better, that he's doing better. And then a few days later, he's doing worse. It was a constant looking at vitals and your O2s and all the SATs and everything, blood work, and then, digestive system stuff, like so many different things that were happening. And it was just the prognosis at the time was, this is just not, it's not good. It's not good. And I mean, you'd even coded. You had a collapsed lung,
Yeah. Yeah.
coded. And was it just once that you
4 minutes,
coded?
twice.
4 minutes.
The longest time was 4 minutes. It
Coded for
took them
4
from the
minutes.
time they notated that my heart stopped. It was 4 minutes later that they got it started. It was 4:02 p.m. My heart stopped, and then 4:06 p.m. they got it started again and got blood pressure back.
It's just unbelievable that you made it back. And at one point, they let us start visiting. It was very difficult to get in. I know Sarah had worked it out where she could spend, a significant amount of time by your side, and I know that had to help, even when
I think
they
so.
weren't necessarily awake. But I don't remember what month it was. But I remember getting a call. You need to come down. You need to be here. So we headed straight to the hospital. And the outlook for the next 12 hours was not good. It was just a very morbid, sad moment for everybody. There were several people there, and I remember thinking, well, that just, this is just not fair. The next day, you had improved, and then the next day you had improved, and this progress continued for a while, to the point to where, a month or two later, you opened your eyes. And I know you don't probably remember opening your eyes, but that was a kind of a huge moment for all of us. It's like, oh my God, he's opened his eyes. Like, that was huge, because, it hadn't happened in, I don't know how many months. You had been completely out.
Yeah.
And Sarah probably could fill in a lot more gaps, because there were times, I think, where you may have opened your eyes a little bit, but you didn't necessarily respond a little bit, but finally started to respond a little bit.
Yeah.
And gradually things begin to, like, what is your first memory? Do you have, like, just kind of what you remember as a memory from waking up, or even being under?
I mean, I was, it would be a long story to tell everyone about the dream, that state that I was in, about that. It was like a very long dream state. Some things in that dream state were actually happening according to what Sarah's told me, but it was not real. It was more computer graphics, CGI like style. It was weird. I have moments of, I remember waking up freezing cold. I was like nude. I don't know if they were bathing me or what they were doing. I have a memory of that. I have some residual pain memories, waking up in severe pain momentarily. But man,
how much did you weigh?
When I went in, I was at 178. When I went to the ER, I was at 178 pounds, which was really great weight for me. Fit-wise, my body mass index was good. When I left the hospital over a year later, I was at 92 pounds.
92 pounds.
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah, it was quite remarkable. But something, the crazy thing is, I don't know if it's just a fight that you had in you to like, no, I'm not done. I'm not giving up. I don't know. But I do know that you continue to work to get better. And it was, had gone from the hospital to the point where you had improved enough that you could move to another facility. I think you moved to a couple different facilities. Mm-hmm. And then you'd moved to Gadsden Regional Rehab Facility for a little while.
Encompass. That's different. It's called Encompass. Yeah.
Encompass.
It's a rehab facility.
And that was quite a journey. It was kind of a big deal. And I put this together. You don't know that I've done this, but this is documenting probably one of the happiest days for so many people who had been, praying for you, visiting. And this is that day.
Oh, wow.
keep on pressing forward. As you're crashing through the waves and blinded to the storm that you keep fighting. And shake your fist at it, drop the rain, grab hold of the lightning to power through. When it hurts, just turning back would leave you 6 feet in the dirt. So fight your way to the
This is my home, and start back again. So I'm home for all these months. I'm getting started, and I've got a long way to go. But I'm driven, and I'm going to get better.
I know it's hard to understand how sailing through the calm won't get you to dry land. When all that you can see are dangers up ahead, there's a
Just to
part
lean
of
in
me
real quick.
That's the only time you've been happy to have some color signs.
into the storm that you keep fighting. And shake your fist at it, drop the rain, grab hold of the lightning to power through. When it hurts, 'cause turning back would leave you 6 feet in the dirt. So fight your way to the other side of the storm. It's worth the ride. Yes, worth all the pain and heartache, every lesson that you learn to prove that you're a fighter through each painful scar you earn. And ride that sail to the storm that you keep fighting.
I sat
Shake your
on,
fist
I don't know how many
drop the
recliners
rain,
trying to find a
grab
perfect
hold
recliner.
of the lightning to power through. When it hurts, 'cause turning back will leave you 6 feet in the dirt. So fight your way to the other side of the storm. It's worth the ride. Of the storm, it's worth the ride.
Especially when you can't breathe. I've never had anxiety before.
Whew.
Yeah,
Congrats.
it's rough, man. I made it.
And here you are, man.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Uh,
It's emotional to see that, you know.
yeah, no, I know. It's emotional for me. Piecing it together was pretty tough, just so you know. Because
bet.
from and it was tough because that was a huge milestone for everybody, especially you, but for everybody that that knew what was going on. I mean, 200 and was it 213 days on a ventilator?
216.
216,
Yeah.
216 days on a ventilator. And then I don't know if hospitalized. I don't know how long you were technically in the hospital.
It was like I left the hospital, went to Anniston, LTAC, back to Riverview. I think total at Riverview was 11 months.
11
And
months.
then I had another where I had to go back. I had rehab. All in all, it was about 16 months worth of hospitalization.
Yeah. It's insane. And so here you are.
Yeah.
I think coming home was a big deal. You had a few bouts, I think, if I'm not mistaken, going back and forth for this or that. Nothing major. You did have heart surgery.
I did. Yeah. Had throat surgery, heart surgery, and just most recently foot surgery.
Yeah.
All that is caused from COVID. I didn't have any underlying health issues. Had a little bit of high blood pressure before COVID. Now I have low blood pressure.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? But I had no other heart conditions. I had no other health problems. And now it's just about getting stronger, you know, in what being on paralytics and being comatose, it really is rough on the body. You know, not being able to eat. I was on a feeding tube. Is another reason that I lost so much weight. But also because of my lungs being so sensitive, they couldn't move me much. So I lost the ability to stand and walk. Lost that in my legs. So it's a lot of work trying to get back my strength, my balance, and do all that with really messed up lungs, because that's what COVID left me with, is basically 40% lung capacity at best.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to learn how to live with that 40% while I go through the whole process of a lung transplant. But the lung transplant would be only to save my life and give me a little bit if I were to get sick again with some type of lung debilitating virus or illness. I have had COVID a second time, but it was different, a different strain. I think it sucked, but it didn't do this to me.
What did
I'm at now.
when you first got the news that you had COVID again? What was the first thing that went through your head? Like where was your mind at that time? Because this was just a month ago.
Yeah, you know, the first time didn't kill me. You know, that was a positive. It tried to. So I did have some anxiety about it, but you know, at this point in my life, I am, whatever comes is what comes, and I'm going to do what I can to fight through whatever comes my way. It's going to suck.
Yeah.
It may hurt. It may feel terrible, but you know, sometimes pain helps us know we're alive
Yeah.
and living, and that's the way I see it. I'd rather be here living, going through a little pain. So yeah, there's anxieties with it, but I got through it.
Well, so milestones, little small successes. Before we start to wrap it up, I just so everybody can kind of
Just
get
to
it.
let you know, I'm sorry, my phone is at 7% right now.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up before that time. But you know, a recent success, and you know, for you has gotten bigger. I mean, you know, like for example, walking across from one end of the house to the other, you know, that was unimaginable a year or two ago.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and here you are. So just kind of tell everybody, I mean, like what, from this point, what is your realistic goal that you were trying to get to in your life at this point?
I am, first and foremost, I want to walk again on my own, unassisted. Right now, I've made it. Last time I tried, I walked about 100 feet on my own. That's like nobody holding me, not walking with anything to balance. That's me using my own coordination and muscle strength to move. I did that and didn't tax my lungs too greatly. So it did tax them, obviously, but so another thing that goes with that is like chronic cough.
Yeah.
That's part of my symptoms from COVID and the lung damage. But I want to be able to get up and move about my house and have my own independence. I want to be able to stand in the kitchen and cook. I want to be able to walk to one of my kids' rooms and knock on the door and walk in with them.
Yeah.
I may be lugging an oxygen tank with me, but by God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there.
Well, if anybody can, man, you can do it. It's an incredible story, and this is just in the beginning of a different chapter for you right now. You had surgery on your foot, plan on getting around and walking soon. I'm super proud of you, guys. You can follow his progress as we go, because Craig, I'm sure, will be involved in a few other music projects with me coming up soon. several things going on in his life. But thank you for being on the second and third edition, technically, because we split it up in two pieces. If you're watching this, you made it this far, you can go back and watch the first part of this on episode 1 of my interview with best friend and incredible human being, Craig Pruett. Craig, I will talk to you soon. Thank you for being on, man. I love you, man.
Hey, I love you. Be encouraged, everyone. Be encouraged.
All right, buddy. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Wait, one more thing. Time out.
What?
One thing I forgot. I got to close this show out with one thing. Your life in a lyric. One thing. If you could sum it up, it could be a song or a song that's not yet written. If you could say, you put it in one phrase, what is it?
You're stronger than you think you are.
That's true, man. You really are. Love you, bro.
Love you.
What this world needs is love.